What's going on, America? This is Tatum again. Hey, I want to talk to you guys about what the president endorsed and the steps that he took forward in prison reform just yesterday. And I think it's invaluable to have this conversation. I think it's invaluable for us as Americans to really understand and identify exactly what happened. This was a big step for America. This was a huge step for reversing the effects of over incarceration in this country. Some people may not believe it. You can come up with your own solutions, but when you look at the numbers, we are over incarcerating people in this country. And I think the over incarceration doesn't necessarily deal in racism and all the other things that some people try to project, but it deals in the fact that we are arresting people, and not even just arresting people. We are sentencing people and having people in prison for things that they shouldn't be in prison for. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars, and it's a waste and a deterrent in morality for our citizens moving forward. So the president, the First Step Act that he endorsed, made it through the House, bipartisan support. The next step is for it to make it past the Senate onto his desk, and then he'll sign it into law. So I think that like I said, it's a great step moving forward, but I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what this involves. Now, we heard the president read a script I don't know if he wrote it or somebody else wrote it, talking about a few principles that he believes is effective for making a difference. A huge thing is that this gives people rehabilitation and redemption. And if you're a Christian and you're a faith and you're a faith believer, then you understand the power in forgiveness. And I think that this act really gives the power back to the prisoners to have a level of forgiveness and redemption implemented in their lives as they return back to society. Because if we don't rehabilitate these people, or we don't give them opportunities when they get out, they're just gonna go back in. It's called recidivism. So that's a major thing that I think that the president has supported and will be implemented to make a difference. And then when you look at other things, and I'm gonna read it right off of the website, and you can look at it. I'll put the link to the actual act in the description section. But when you look at some of the details that are being articulated, it really makes a huge difference. So one thing I want to look at is the placement of prisoners closer to family. And I know it sounds very minor or something that's not very serious, but when you talk about the morale of a person that's been sentenced to prison, how can they communicate with their children, how they communicate with their family moving forward, that's an invaluable concept. The next thing is the home confinement for low risk. Giving people the ability to be in home confinement instead of in a prison system. And anybody that has been to prison, and I've never been to prison, but I know people that have been to prison. I got family members currently in prison, that the prison system isn't really conducive for people. You know, it's like animals in a cage. And to have the ability for low risk prisoners to be able to be in home confinement is a plus. Another thing I want to talk about is the rehabilitation, the identification for prisoners who are returning as citizens. That's a huge thing. It's the reincorporation of people back into society. De-escalation training. It's something that the president touched on is when they do go back, not only will it give them opportunities to be better and go back into the community, but they go back into the community with principles and things that they can utilize that can make them better people. They don't end up going to prison again, because you don't go to prison for nothing. You go to prison for bad behavior, but when you get out, you don't want to continue to have that bad behavior. Also, evidence-based treatment for opioid and heroin abuse. Opioid is a crisis. Obviously, opioid, heroin, huge influx of heroin users, heroin victims, especially in the state of Arizona. And I know this is a national idea, but in the state of Arizona, heroin overdose, I saw it increase over the last 5 years I was in policing. I saw it increase tremendously, where they had to literally outfit the entire police department with Narcan, which is the chemical combination that you shoot it in somebody's nose, and it literally brings them back from the dead if they're overdosing on heroin. So that is another really, really invaluable principle that's being implemented in this thing. Talk about healthcare, talk about rape elimination, different things like and rape elimination. Well, you could be able to read it for yourself, but I think that those are all avenues in which we need to have these conversations. Now, let's talk about the history of this. And I want you to pay attention and listen to me really clearly. I want you to be able to focus on what I'm saying, because this is invaluable to our democracy moving forward. And this also goes in the political realm. Look at who was in office and who didn't do anything about prison reform, anything substantive. The previous administration had 8 years to figure out what we needed to do some meaningful prison reform on a federal level. This is not a state level reform. This is a federal level reform to reform people in federal prisons. But I want you to look at the people who is currently resisting this. I don't care if it's on the Republican side, Democratic side, the right, the left. Look at who's opposing these principles. You got people like Cory Booker. You got people like Mitch McConnell. I think we need to really look at our legislators and look at the people who we vote and say, if you can't get behind an act, a first step, pun intended, if you can't get beyond your partisan ideology, then I don't know how to help you. I won't vote for you. But for Cory Booker to be literally resisting this and saying, well, it's not enough. Well, we have a long way to go. And if you don't even want to get the first step passed, which has been indicative of the left this whole time. And what this means for African Americans, because the principle has been that we've been over incarcerated. Black Americans, I'm gonna start using the word Black Americans. What we have seen for Black Americans, we've been over incarcerated because of a lot of what we've done, a lot of policies that have been implemented. But if somebody like Cory Booker and the people on the left don't even want to take the first step, and let me tell you why they don't want to take the first step. Let me give you some insight onto why. The reason they don't want to take the first step is because currently Republicans still run the House and the Senate. Their overhaul or their little blue, splash in the bucket will take effect in January. If they can implement this and get this passed, it's going to be passed under a Republican majority in the House and the Senate. So people like Cory Booker and that play these liberal games, they don't want to see it passed until they have the House, and they can put their name behind a bill and have it so when he run for president, he can put his title and his name behind legislation, meaningful legislation that was passed, because they didn't do nothing about it all these other years. So just a sneak peek. Pay attention to who's supporting this and who's not. This is the first step to something great. I have family members in prison doing federal time. You know, you have people like Alice Johnson, who the president communed her sentence. And another thing, I need to say this because I think a lot of people forget about some of the things that's going to be rolled out because of this. The 3-strike rule, the 3-strike law that was implemented by the crime bill presented by President Bill Clinton in 1994, which if you had a 3-strike, occurrence, you get life in prison. What this new piece of legislation has done, supported by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, it has rolled back that mandate to where if you get 3 strikes, you don't do life in your rest of your life in prison. It goes down to a 25-year sentence, which is neck breaking, break speed type of innovation in our prison reform system. Sentencing guidelines, rehabilitation, all of these things are invaluable to our country moving forward. And I take my hat off and I thank the President of the United States for working with people on a bipartisan basis to make this happen. The president is making things happen. And I think that we really need to get away from all of the negative rhetoric and all the BS that people are articulating and look at invaluable principles, invaluable pieces of legislation that the president is authoring, or not necessarily authoring, but the president is supporting and signing into law. Make sure you realize that President Trump is doing his thing. The first 2 years, the first time meaningful legislation on a federal level has been passed. We should all be excited. This is a win for America. This is a win for Black America. Y'all be blessed. I'll see you next time. Make sure you check me out on Instagram at @TheOfficerTatum. If you want to donate to the channel, by all means, Venmo, Patreon, and PayPal. Love to have you to support the channel. But I always remember that sharing the channel, sharing the videos, liking the channel are all invaluable principles in sharing the message. Thank you guys. I love you, and I'll see you later. Peace.